Hey, here we are in our next video, our fourth one in our series of this packet. So I'm sure you're pretty upset to see how many videos there are here, but you'll get over it. We'll all live. Most of you will. All right, so let's start off with the Battle of Talas. This was an epic battle where China met the Abbasid Caliphate. So you had two major powers of the post-classical era. The Abbasid Caliphate and China met. What really happened was this was the battle where China's expansion, it kept going further and further west, and it kind of halted and stopped their expansion right here. So it's basically kind of like a spot where China's empire was basically ended right here. It stopped their expansion. And the Abbasid Caliphate, which is one of the Islamic caliphates, where their empire began. So the Battle of Talas was where the basically the Abbasid Caliphate was able to defeat China, and their empires kind of merged and said, this is where we're going to meet. It is a major spot in the Silk Road trade, but it's kind of like where they meet each other, and basically they kind of stopped because they realized they've extended themselves about as far as they can. So it's basically a spot where China and the Abbasid Caliphate meet. The Abbasid Caliphate defeats China. China basically says, okay, we've done enough expanding. We're going to rely on our trade with all this new Western land that we've come and we've taken over, and we'll trade, use that as our point to trade on the Silk Road with the Abbasid Caliphate and other areas. During this time period, too, the city of Xi'an becomes a very cosmopolitan trade center. It'll later be known as Xi''an Xi'an, but this has access to more Western trade in this region. More people who are more Turkish, other areas come into here to trade goods, and it brings them into the other rich southern areas of China in the Song dynasty and the Tang dynasty after that. So Xi'an becomes a major cosmopolitan trade center on the Silk Road, connecting China to the westlands of China and the Abbasid Caliphate in the Silk Road. Very significant for trade. It becomes a place of cultural diffusion, spreading of religion and culture as well. Uyghurs are people, it's pronounced Uyghurs, U-I-G-H-U-R-S. Uyghurs are people we don't normally associate or we don't think of as Chinese. They are people who live in Western Chinese, have more Turkish ancestry, are predominantly mostly Muslim people who were involved in money lending and trading in Western China, and were very important as they're a more pastoral, nomadic people in the moving of goods from China to other areas in the Silk Road. They're much more linked to the Turkish people than a lot of the Han Chinese people we typically think of in the Han Dynasty, Song Dynasty, and the Tang Dynasty. So Uyghurs were moneylenders. They were involved in a lot of trade. That was their significance in post-classical China. Sogdian was a small empire in between, like we're in the area of the Abbasid Caliphate and China. And this is kind of in that middle land. We talked about the Battle of Talas. These people were kind of like in the middle of the Abbasid Caliphate and China. And these were the people who kind of traded with both sides. Sogdians, they're ancestors of the modern Uzbek people. Their major trade center would have been Samarkand at this time and Kashgar. They did a lot of trading with the Uyghur people of Western China, which had goods go back and forth between the Abbasid Caliphate and with Baghdad, major cities over here, and with China over here. So they were in the middle. They were significant as a group of Muslim people who traded with both Western China and also with the Abbasid Caliphate on the Silk Road. Turks are people related to the Sogdian people. They are Muslim people of Central Asia as well. We think of these people are from the Central Asia region, today countries like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and they moved into Turkey eventually and became the Ottoman Turks, or an empire. In the post-classical era, like the Sogdians, they are nomadic people who move goods back and forth. So they are known as people who move goods back and forth from Central Asia and the Abbasid dynasty, although cities like Baghdad, all the way to China, kind of in this middle ground where the Battle of Talas nearly was fought by both the Chinese and the Abbasid Caliphate. The Sui dynasty was a dynasty that brought China back together after the Han dynasty fell. Very similar in some ways to the Qin dynasty. It didn't last a long time, and the Qin dynasty had a building project of building the Great Wall. The Sui dynasty is most known for reuniting China, like the Qin united China. The Sui reunited China after the Han. And the Sui dynasty built the Grand Canal to link China's trade. Qin dynasty built the Great Wall. The Sui dynasty built the Grand Canal many years later. Also, the Sui dynasty didn't last long and brought China back together for a long dynasty to come afterwards. The Sui dynasty fell and was followed by the Tang dynasty. It looks like Tang, T-A-N-G, where the Qin dynasty that we talked about earlier fell and the Han dynasty came. So when we do our song, you know, Shang Zhou Qin Han, Shang Zhou Qin Han, Sui Tang Song, Sui Tang Song. Qin, short before the Han, brought everything back together, built the Great Wall. Sui dynasty, before the Tang, made the Grand Canal and brought China together as well in the post-classical era. Grand Canal, that's on here again. That's like the third time. Yes, I will put 3 slips of it into the bucket. It's a good chance it gets picked. It's a pretty important word, though, that Grand Canal. Increased trade in China, spread it out to the Silk Road, united China north and south on rivers. Okay, enough of that. Write the definition down you already had. Actually, you don't need to write anything down. You already got the definition. Let's move on. Okay, flip a couple pages and go to the Byzantine Empire. I know you are probably sick of this, but that's okay. You gotta do it anyway. All right, so Byzantine Empire. Let's start with some major cities, and I think we can do these together, okay? Alexandria and Tripoli. What do you need to know about Alexandria and Tripoli? These are North African cities that were connected with Constantinople and increased trade. Alexandria is in Egypt. Tripoli is in North Africa, Libya. They're North African cities that trade with the Byzantine Empire and help expand trade of goods in the Mediterranean trade route of the Byzantine Empire. That is why they are significant as trade cities. Crete and Sicily are islands that serve as bases for the Byzantine trade. They are important because here's Crete, here's Sicily, Constantinople's up here. They're able to make trade networks in the Byzantine Empire on these cities and go from place to place. It allows goods and supplies to move from place to place and have islands to stop on the Mediterranean trade route of the Byzantine Empire. They were also important before in the earlier Roman Empire, before the West fell in 476. But the Byzantine Empire stayed until 1453. Yeah, those kind of a couple important years there. Italian city-states are also major players on the Mediterranean's trade routes, and they also trade with the Byzantine Empire over here, as they are able to expand their trade, and they kind of form their own city-states around this time period. They become dependent on imports of grain and textiles in the Byzantine Empire, and are part of the major Byzantine Mediterranean trade of the post-classical era. Kiev Rus. Let's do these together. Kiev is a major city right here. Kiev Rus are the people who lived in and around that city. Kiev Rus is interesting because that is basically where Russian people get their start, where they see their heritage coming from. Oh, there's a bigger version of that. I like that. So we got Kiev Rus, which is located basically right here, and they're kind of in the middle of a nice trade route. They can get to Constantinople right here. They can take this trade route and river and they can get to Novgorod right here. They have some connections with rivers that can get them the trade routes over here, a little closer to the Silk Road region. Kiev Rus is in a good location in Europe to establish trade and to grow as a city. This will allow Kiev to grow and will later lead to the formation of a Russian Empire, which will become freaking huge. Oh, you'll see. Kiev's also later taken over by the Tatars, ancestors of the Mongols, and not ancestors of the Mongols, descendants of the Mongols, and will later become a major power. They're going to be more of a early modern power in the next era. Talked about Novgorod already. It's on the Hanseatic League, a major trade city right there, and it's also connected to Scandinavia. Scandinavia is this region up here of northern Europe, which provided a lot of timber and wood and some fish that allowed Novgorod and Scandinavia to make major trade in the Hanseatic League, but also connected them to Constantinople, surprisingly, by river, and other areas that connected them to the Silk Road trade route. And let's stop there. We're going to stop here, and we're going to have one more video. Your last one's coming up. You're almost done. Take a breath. You're going to make it.